You're going to understand how you could become a master of ejaculation control by the end of this video. This isn't your daddy's ejaculation control guide, which is good because if it was, you may have never been born. But fortunately, you're here to understand how to become a legendary master of ejaculation control. Let me ask you right now, how's your ejaculation control? Do you consistently bust around the same time? Like, is there a certain consistency to how long you last before ejaculating? Maybe you have no clue. Think of the last time you had sex. Maybe it was last night. Maybe it was a month ago, a week ago, maybe it was years ago. If so, we need to get you laid, and we'll get there, Was it fulfilling? Was it unfulfilling? What went right? What went wrong? Just kind of reflecting, like, what does your sex look like these days? And now I want you to ask yourself, what does the most ideal sexual experience look like for you? Specifically around, like, how in control do you feel? Do you have to, like, constantly worry about, am I going to ejaculate? Or is there this absolute 100% control of ejaculation so that you only ejaculate when you want to, so that you're free to totally enjoy sex as long as you want, as much as you want, until you choose that you're ready to be done. And I'm here to tell you that this is the possibility that you have. This is the opportunity you have when training in sexual kung fu, is to develop legendary levels of ejaculation control. All right, let's get into it. I'm Jonathan White, and I've helped thousands of men just like you learn to master their sexual energy and manifest their ideal life. Make sure you subscribe to the channel to stay updated on the content, and get my free ebook. There's a link in the video description below. It will help you to continue your journey developing legendary ejaculation control. So here's the thing. Based on worldwide statistics, the average man lasts about 4 minutes during sex before ejaculating. That's not very long. It's not very long at all. And this is something that leads a lot of men to feel very frustrated, and it leads some men to avoid sex entirely. And I know some of you don't even last that long. Some of you, it's like 20 seconds. It's 2 minutes. It's 2 pumps and done. And like, if that's the case, it's okay. You're not alone. A lot of men struggle with this. I used to have issues lasting as long as I wanted. But the good news is that every single one of you, even if you only last 7 seconds right now, I don't care. If you really implement what I'm going to share with you, and you go deep into the training of sexual kung fu, you can learn to last as long as you want. Sound good? So as you can see, I've got some things drawn up here. Basically, we're going to talk about the nervous system and different things happening in the body. But I want to start by talking about some of the misconceptions around ejaculation control. What a lot of men are looking for, and what a lot of people are teaching on this stuff, is like, okay, well, what do I do? Like, I'm about to ejaculate. It's right there. Like, what do I do? Here's the thing. At that point, it's too late. It's already too late. It's like you're in the car crash. What do you do? Well, the thing that you want to do is to avoid getting in the crash in the first place. This is what ejaculation control is really about. If it's like something you frantically do at the last minute, that's not ejaculation control. That's ejaculation desperation. This is what a lot of people are teaching. So ejaculation control is about never having to reach that point in the first place to where you have to do something drastic. It's about keeping yourself in control. So this is why a lot of people teach things like, first I want to start with some misconceptions, some things that I don't recommend that are kind of commonly taught. Number one being the squeeze and hold, like, oh, just squeeze your pelvic floor and just lock it off. Like, do that as much as you can during sex to prevent yourself from ejaculating. Well, on a very technical level, yes, it can keep you from ejaculating if you go over the edge. Potentially, but the other thing it often does, like I remember when I was first learning this stuff a long time ago, I was using that squeeze and hold technique, and I'd be having sex, and then it was like I started, it was like, oh, I'm gonna ejaculate, here it comes. So I'd be like, okay, I just squeeze, I can hold it back, and I would technically have this like dry orgasm where nothing came out, but then I would go limp, and couldn't get it up for a little bit, and what was happening was I was just having a retrograde ejaculation where the semen just goes into the bladder, and then I would urinate it out. And like sometimes I'd be able to get hard again afterwards, but it wasn't really ideal. I'm like, something's wrong with this. This isn't really controlling my ejaculation. And as you'll learn, the kegels and squeezing the pelvic floor can actually strengthen premature ejaculation patterns, which is less than ideal. Okay, so let's get into what's ideal. The first thing to understand is that when it comes to ejaculation control, we need to understand the nervous system. Don't worry, we'll keep it basic. So here's kind of a representation of your nervous system. And I have these two, there's a red I know there's a lot of blue in here too, but there's this red pathway and there's this blue pathway. And these are meant to represent your parasympathetic and sympathetic nervous system, the fight or flight response and the rest and digest response. We could also simplify it saying your tension response and your relaxation response sexually. So ejaculation is a function of your sympathetic nervous system. It's part of the fight or flight response. So when you're stressed out all the time, when you're really tense in your body, or you're doing, specifically squeezing the pelvic floor, also sends nerve signals through this sympathetic nervous system to strengthen the buildup towards ejaculation, which is why this is a terrible idea. So most men have a lot of stress and tension in their bodies, and especially because how past sexual experiences tend to shape your current sexual experience. And most men grow up with a lot of shame around sex, like masturbation, having to hide it, frantically watching porn before their mom walks in. This trains in a stress response in your nervous system. So you go to have sex, your stress response kicks on, and then it's just a countdown until you ejaculate. That's basically the cause of premature ejaculation, is this dominant system of stress and tension. So if we want to develop ejaculation control, we need to understand how to be more parasympathetically dominant and how to shift more into the parasympathetic state when we are on that climb up of tension towards ejaculation, okay? So here's the first thing. Let me write this down. Number one, rule number one, breath. This is the easiest way to shift your body, your mind, your nervous system, is to change your breathing. When you start tensing up, you're building up towards ejaculation, your breath always gets shallow. You start to breathe from high up in the chest, and this further exacerbates your nervous system. It's just a countdown to ejaculation. Breathing deeply from your belly, from your lower belly, your abdomen, breathing into your pelvic floor, feel it, full breathing. This is a simple way to keep yourself more relaxed and in control during sex, breathing properly. And I know it's simple. Maybe you may have heard me say this many times before, but it's the number one thing that I personally tend to forget about. If I'm going to forget something, when I'm having sex, and my students, the men I work with, it's usually the number one thing that they stop doing as well when they're having sex is breathing deeply. So that's kind of the foundation of ejaculation control. So practice it. Practice deep breathing. And especially when you're having sex, when you're masturbating, practice deep breathing. And if you really get good at that alone is going to have a big impact on your ability to control ejaculation. Now the second thing is the pelvic floor. And what most people will tell you is, if you do so many kegels that your pelvic floor gets so strong and muscular and jacked, you can just squeeze off and prevent ejaculation from happening. Which is complete bullshit. Complete bullshit. I did kegels for like 10 years. I did a ridiculous amount of kegels. I did kegels till I literally developed like pain in my pelvic floor. I did a lot of kegels. I had a very strong pelvic floor. Never would my kegeling stop, would just bypass the ejaculation function in the sense of there not being essentially like a refractory period, or a sense of like dropping off a little bit of my energy. It's complete misconception. It's complete bullshit. This is just using force against force. You're using your sympathetic nervous system to try to override your stress response. Because again, the squeezing in the pelvic floor, the nerves in that specific region are wired in to your sympathetic nervous system. And that's the same muscles that contract to ejaculate around your bladder, around your prostate. So to squeeze them in the first place, the brain's getting the signal of, oh, okay, he's building up to ejaculation. It's happening really quickly. I guess he's ready to bust right away. Must be a tiger chasing. He's got to knock this woman up before he gets eaten. All right, send out the load, boys. this is what's happening. So squeezing your pelvic floor to control ejaculation is, in my opinion, retarded. Absolutely retarded, ineffective, and is usually just going to make the issue worse, because this is going to ingrain in a stress response in your physiological body, in your nervous system. It's going to make you very conducive to premature ejaculation. So I don't recommend Kegels for the majority of men. If you actually legitimately have a weak pelvic floor, which very few men truly do, then yeah, you'll benefit from some Kegels. But for ejaculation control, bruh, you're going in the wrong direction. What I'm talking about with pelvic floor is keeping it relaxed, avoiding it tensing up. and squeezing. Because without that tension in the pelvic floor, the sympathetic nervous system never kicks on. It's never getting the signal to build up to an ejaculation. And it's now moving signals through your parasympathetic nervous system because you're relaxed. You can only add so much tension to your body, but when it comes to orgasms, you can infinitely release and relax and always hold more. When it comes to like sex and pleasure, is what I'm talking about. So keep the pelvic floor relaxed. And this is a process because most men have what's called involuntary kegels, where your penis is being stimulated and you contract in response. And I want to ask you right now, like, do you know if you're squeezing your pelvic floor during sex? Do you know how you're breathing during sex? So bring it back to you. Like, do you know what your dynamics are right now? And if you don't, it's time to start paying attention to it. And it already shows you like, okay, that's a great sign. You don't know, it means you've been a bit disconnected from what's actually happening in your body. Now you have an opportunity to make that a conscious connection and choose ejaculation control. So basically keep the pelvic floor relaxed, and this is gonna take some training. The first thing I recommend is to follow my guided pelvic floor 12-minute release practice. Do this at least a few times a week. I'll put a link in the video description. That's gonna help you start to release these tension patterns from your pelvic floor so you can keep it relaxed during sex. How does that sound? So now we get to point number 3, which is energy circulation. Oh, my whiteboard's falling off. Someday I'll get a real stand, I swear. Okay, energy circulation. This is where the rubber meets the road. And this is the core of this is really the meat of the work of sexual kung fu training, or the impossible burger if you're a vegan. And what I also want to talk about right now is the possibility of having non-ejaculatory orgasms, because this is also a game changer for ejaculation control. A lot of men don't realize that they can have orgasms without ejaculating. So if you learn how to have non-ejaculatory orgasms, you never have to experience that refractory period following an ejaculation. And this also gives you tremendous control over your ejaculation, because now you're going through this whole different dynamic of non-ejaculating from orgasms. So your pleasure is increasing, your enjoyment of sex is increasing, and you don't have to have a refractory period, and you don't have to be limited by when does the ejaculation happen. Pretty cool, right? And I also want to check in with you, like, how are you doing right now? Does this seem like reasonable and realistic for you? Does this feel like something you can achieve? You know, I'm just curious. And I want you to just kind of check in with yourself of like, is there this voice coming into your mind saying like, you'll never be able to control your ejaculation. You're never going to be able to last in bed. And I want you to tell you that the part of you that's telling you that is a goddamn liar. That's your inner resistance. That's the part of you that doesn't want to grow. That's afraid to grow. It's the part of you that's afraid of developing incredible ejaculation control, because there's power in that. There's massive pleasure in that. And some men don't feel like they're worthy to it. So there's this whole other component of emotional work and stepping into your worthiness and really owning who it is that you want to be and who you're becoming as a man doing this work. And I just want you to I want to give you full permission right now, because no one ever did, that you are worthy of experiencing massive levels of pleasure. You are worthy of having the best sex you can possibly imagine, way better than your dad, your grandpa, any of your ancestors are having, all right? You are worthy of being a master of sexual kung fu, all right? So I hereby dub you worthy, just like some support, because it's good to hear this, because we often don't, you know, we're not taught about this in school. Ejaculation Control 101 I have written here. This should be a college course, but it's not, is it? Well, that's why I'm here, guys. I'm here to tell you that you can do this. Every single one of you can do this. It's just a matter of time and effort and consistency. That is the definition of Kung Fu, all right? So pep talk, let's get back into it. So talking about non-ejaculatory orgasms, and you know, check out some of my other videos on non-ejaculatory orgasm to learn more about that. But energy circulation, this is a more advanced aspect of it. Everything we talked about is setting the foundation, but understand the dynamic of when you're becoming aroused, there's pressure building up in your genitals. It's building up in your balls, building up in your pelvic floor. It's sending the signal to your prostate to like, hey, get ready to shoot a fat load, all right? And eventually, you know, that pressure hits its maximum point and it's dispersed. It's like a spark, like a static electricity. Friction builds up and then a spark of discharge, and you ejaculate out. Then you have to recover, right? Well, what if you could prevent that buildup from even happening in the first place? And you do this by one of the core, most famous techniques of sexual kung fu and Taoist systems is called the microcosmic orbit. This is an energy pathway that moves through the body. It goes from the perineum, up the spine, up the back, to the roof of the mouth. The front channel connects to the roof of the mouth. You place the tongue against the palate, flows down the front of the body. So it's this loop. It's this container. This is one of the pathways we work in sexual kung fu. There's also other potential pathways, but we open this up through internal training, through meditative practices, through qigong, through yogic practices and breathing exercises. And now we have a much bigger container to hold our arousal in, because just your balls, just your pelvic floor, just your penis, like, yeah, it can hold some, but it don't hold so much. So now what's happening is, as you're having sex, the friction's building up, it's building up the genitals. Again, it's either you ejaculate it out or you move it. So we start to move it, we start to circulate it, and it is moved through the rest of the body. The rest of your body can hold a lot more arousal than just the genitals. So the friction, the tension becomes dispersed, and now your whole body is filled with that energy. And that's also one of the foundations for experiencing full body orgasm, is that buildup is moving through your entire body. Oh yeah. So you master these three things, you will master ejaculation control. I'm not going to say it's the easiest thing you're going to do. I'm not going to say it's going to be like an overnight result. This is training. This is consistency. But if you keep at it, if you commit yourself to saying, I'm going to commit myself to sexual kung fu, I'm going to go all the way with it, it's just a matter of when. When are you going to get there? It's when are you going to develop legendary ejaculation control? It's not an if, it's a when. And the wild factor there is your seriousness about the training. Ultimately, so it's on you now. Like, what are you going to do? You're going to take what I've shared with you, you're going to implement it, you're going to practice it, you're going to own it? Or is this just another entertainment video like, oh, that sounds nice, maybe in a year I'll try that? You know what I mean? So you make the choice right now. And something else I want to share is that there are also very psychological dynamics to ejaculation control. Like, this is all kind of the physical-ish things that you can do, physical, nervous system, energetic, and this alone, you know, it's 90% of the work, but there is some psychological aspects as well. And if you'd like me to make a video on that, just let me know in the comments below. I'd be happy to. So what I want you to do now, make sure you get my free ebook. There's a link to it in the video description, because this is going to be your guided training on how to develop this legendary ejaculation control. And now I also want you to go through my premature ejaculation playlist. Got a whole playlist, all kinds of things on ejaculation control, what's causing premature ejaculation, etc. Go through that. It will be an incredible resource for you on this journey of sexual kung fu. Make sure you subscribe. Make sure you give this video a like, hit the subscribe button, and have a great day, boys.